guys, and welcome back to the Crochet Tour YouTube channel. In today's video I'm bringing you another tutorial, and this time it's another Squid Game tutorial actually. So this time it's for player 456, so here he is. And yeah, this is a request from Serena on Instagram, so I hope you like this. I wasn't going to do any more Squid Game tutorials because I felt like there were already quite a lot out there, but I didn't really notice any that had a removable jacket, so that's the difference that I did in my tutorial. I'll show you that in a second as well. So yeah, if you're interested in finding out how to make this, then do keep watching. It's kind of similar to the pattern for the pink soldier, so like the base of the body is pretty much the same as this, but just with some colour changes. So the main differences on this one is obviously the jacket, as I mentioned, so this is fully removable like this. So this is what it looks like, and if you were struggling to make that, then you could just leave it at this and it still looks really cute. So yeah, that's quite good. That's like an optional extra thing that you can make. And then also obviously the hair is different on this one, so as you can see, obviously with the pink soldier there is no hair. It was more the hood that was the sort of special part to that one, whereas with this there is some hair, and it is a little bit complicated to make. Not necessarily complicated, it's just time consuming and can be a little bit frustrating when you're sewing everything down, but yeah, this is what it looks like. And if you were struggling with that, you could just use a different technique to make the hair, such as maybe just using creating like a black piece and just sewing that to the top of the head, or you could use some individual yarn strands and just kind of tie those to the top of the head and do quite a lot of those, and that would create some hair as well. So there are always alternatives if you're struggling with anything in the pattern, but I've tried my best to explain and show you what I'm doing as much as possible, so hopefully you can follow along. As always, the written pattern is available on my blog for free, and that will be linked down below, but this is one of the patterns where I would recommend that you probably do watch the video, because there are some, as I mentioned, more tricky parts that were difficult for me to just explain in writing. It's better for you to see it really. But yeah, without further ado, I'll show you what you'll be needing for this tutorial. For this tutorial you'll be needing aran weight yarn in the following colours: a skin colour close to player 456 skin tone, turquoise, white and black. Then you'll be needing your crochet hook. This is a 4mm crochet hook to go with the aran weight yarn. You can size up or size down if you're using a different weight of yarn. You'll be needing a yarn needle for sewing things together. You'll be needing some stitch markers. I'm just using some offcuts of yarn there. You'll be needing some scissors, some stuffing. You'll need a lot more than this. This is just to demonstrate. Then you'll be needing some safety eyes. I've got some 12mm safety eyes here. You can use whatever size you like. And then I've also got some fabric glue, because I'm going to be adding the eyes once we've already stuffed and closed up the head, rather than actually attaching the backs of the safety eyes inside the head. So that's what the glue is for. And then finally you'll be needing some pins for sewing, and I wouldn't say that this is optional this time. I think this is necessary for sewing down the hair at the very least, because it's quite involved doing that. So yep, that's everything that you'll be needing for this tutorial. We're going to start off by crocheting the head, so if you grab your peach coloured yarn, we're going to start off by doing 6 single crochets in a magic circle for round 1. So that's the end of round 1. We've got our 6 single crochets. Now for round 2, we're just going to increase all the way around. So that was my first increase. I'm just going to do 5 more now. Okay, so now we should have 12 single crochets all the way around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You might need to pull a little bit more on that tail as well to close up the hole. You can see that I closed that up there. So now I'm going to talk you through the next few rounds because they'll just be standard increases in increments of 6. So for round 3, you're going to do single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 4, 2 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 5, 3 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 6, 4 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 36 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 7, 5 single crochet increase, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 42 single crochets at the end of the round. And then rounds 8 to 17, so 10 rounds in total, just single crochet all the way around. I'll meet you at the end of round 17 as we're then going to start doing some decreases. So I got to the end of round 17, this is what it looks like now, and we're going to start doing some decreases in round 18. So to start off with, we're going to do 5 single crochets. And then we're going to do a decrease. So just like that, and we're going to repeat that pattern 5 more times. That'll get us down to 36 single crochets at the end of the round, and I'll just talk you through the next few rounds as well because they're just, again, standard decreases in increments of 6. So for round 19, you're going to do 4 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. Round 20, 3 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 24 single crochets at the end of the round. And then round 21, 2 single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you to 18 single crochets at the end of the round. I'll meet you at that point as we then need to stuff the head. So I got to the end of round 21 and I've stuffed the head firmly at this point, as you can see, so you're going to want to do the same. Then for round 22, you're just going to do single crochet decrease and repeat that 5 more times to get you down to 12 single crochets at the end of the round. I'll meet you at this point as we then need to change to our turquoise colour, and I'm going to be using the fake single crochet method to do this, so I'll show you how to do that afterwards. So I got to the end of round 22, this is what the head's looking like now. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to be changing to turquoise now. So you could do that with the standard colour change method. So on your final, well, I guess the final decrease of round 22, you would just pull through in your new colour rather than the colour that you were previously using, and that would change the colour. But I'm going to be using the fake single crochet method to do this because I think it's a bit neater and it helps the colour change to be a bit less visible. So in order to do that, I'm just going to cut my yarn now, leaving a bit of a tail. It doesn't need to be particularly long, just a slight tail like that. Then I'm going to pull that tail through, and then I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to skip the next single crochet and go into the one after that and just pull that tail through with my crochet hook. Then I'm going to go back to that final decrease from round 22 into the front loop only from our current perspective, so the loop closest to us. And I'm just going to pull that tail through again. So now what you'll see is we have a fake single crochet, a fake single crochet here that we've just created using that tail, and it just makes it less obvious where the round ended and where you did your colour change. So once we've done that, you can just attach your new colour into any one really of these single crochets, but I'm going to pick the fake single crochet to reattach the new colour into. So this is the turquoise I'm going to be using, and I'm just going to pull that through, and then I'm going to just do a chain like that, and then everything is now ready to go. So we're ready to start round 23. So for round 23, you're just going to do single crochet, so one single crochet, oh sorry, wrong stitch, one single crochet, and you may need to pull on your tails a little bit to keep everything nice and tight, so I'm just going to do that again. So that's one single crochet, and then in the next stitch you're going to be doing an increase, 1, 2, and then you're just going to repeat that 5 more times. That'll get you to the end of the round, and you should be back up to 18 single crochets at the end of round 23. And I'll meet you at this point as we then need to do another colour change to white. Got to the end of round 23 and I've got my 18 single crochets in the turquoise colour. I'm now going to change colour to white, as I mentioned, and I'm going to be doing the fake single crochet method again. So I'll just show you once more just in case it's helpful to see it again. So cut my yarn, got a bit of a tail, going to turn my work, skip this single crochet, go into the next one after that, pull that yarn tail through, then go back to the final single crochet from round 23 into the closest loop to us at the moment, and just pull that yarn tail through again. And now I've got my fake single crochet that I've created just here, as you can see. So now I'm going to reattach the white yarn into that fake single crochet stitch. Pull on the tails, make sure everything is nice and tight, and then I'm going to start round 24. So I'm going to start by doing 2 single crochets, so 1, then 2, and then I'm going to do an increase in the next stitch. Just like that, and I'm going to repeat that pattern 5 more times. That will get me up to 24 single crochets at the end of round 24, and I will just talk you through again the next few rounds because again, you should know how to do these. So for round 25 you're going to do 3 single crochet increase and repeat that 5 more times to get you to 30 single crochets at the end of the round. And then for rounds 26 to 31 you're going to single crochet all the way around, and again I'll meet you at the end of round 31 because we then need to change back to turquoise. So I got to the end of round 31 and I'm just going to change colour to turquoise again. Once again I'm going to use the fake single crochet method, and again I will just show you it in case it's helpful. So just going to skip this single crochet, go into the next one, pull that yarn tail through, then go back to the final single crochet from round 31 it was, and then go into the closest loop from our current perspective, pull that through, and there we have it. We've got our fake single crochet. Now I'm going to reattach my turquoise. Cool. So for rounds 32 and 33, so 2 rounds in total, we're just going to be single crocheting all the way around just like this. So yeah, I'll meet you at the end of round 33. So I just got to the end of round 33 and now we're going to start mapping out the legs so that we can crochet those. So you're going to need 4 stitch markers for this, and it might be nice to have 2 of one colour and 2 of the other colour so that you can do each leg in a different colour, but it doesn't really matter. It should be fairly obvious what we're trying to do here, hopefully, once I've explained it all to you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to count 7 single crochets after the end of round 33. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're going to place a stitch marker in here. So I'll start with my pink ones, and then we're going to count back 14 single crochets including the marked stitch, and we're going to place another stitch marker in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then it will be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So this one here, I'm going to place another pink stitch marker like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the first one that we placed, and we're going to count 2 single crochets after this. So 1, 2, and we're going to put another stitch marker in here. So now I'm onto my white ones because this is going to be for the other leg. So that's that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to count 14 single crochets after and including this marked stitch that we just did, and that'll be the final stitch marker that we place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So this one. Sorry, hopefully you saw that on camera. If not, I'll just count again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that was the 14th one after the first white stitch marker that I placed. So now we have the 2 stitch markers of each colour placed, and this should map out 2 14 single crochet legs. So that's what these are, and then there's going to be a 1 single crochet gap on each side, and we're going to have to go back and sew that up at the end because it's going to create a hole, but it's just because I didn't want the legs to be completely next to each other. I wanted there to be a slight gap in between them. So now that we've mapped out the legs, we can start actually crocheting the first leg. So for round 1, you're simply going to single crochet up to the first pink stitch marker that you placed, or whatever colour you used. So 1, and I am going to also be marking the first stitch of the round just to remind myself where the round started, and I was just getting a different colour stitch marker as well so I don't confuse myself. So that's the first single crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th one will be into this marked stitch. So I'm just going to remove the stitch marker because now I know which stitch I'm going into. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the other pink marked stitch, or whatever colour it was that you used for your first couple of stitch markers, and we're going to single crochet into this one now. So I'm going to again remove the stitch marker because now I know where I need to go. So I'm just going to single crochet into here, try and keep it quite tight to reduce any gaps, but it doesn't really matter because we are going to go back and sew up any gaps. So that's the first single crochet, and then we're going to do 6 more, and that should take us up to the stitch marker for the beginning of the round 1. So 3, 4, 5 and 6. So that was the end of round 1. We should now have a 14 single crochet leg that we're starting to create here. So now all we need to do is we just need to do some rounds of single crocheting all the way around. So for rounds 2 to 4, so the next 3 rounds, you're just going to single crochet all the way around. Then for round 5, you're going to change to white. I'm going to use the fake single crochet method again. I'm not going to show you it again because I've already shown you it 3 times now in this video. So you're going to change to white, and you're going to do rounds 5 to 6 single crochet all the way around in white. And I'll meet you at the end of round 6 as we then need to stuff the leg and the body. So I got to the end of round 6 of the first leg, and I just added some stuffing for both the body and also the leg, as you can see. So you're probably going to want to do the same at this point. And then for round 7, we're just going to decrease all the way around, and that'll get us down to 7 stitches at the end of round 7. So I'll meet you at that point as we'll then close up this leg, and then we'll reattach our yarn and work the other leg. Just finished round 7, so now I'm going to close up that hole. So I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a bit of a tail, and I'm going to pull the tail through. Then I'm going to grab my yarn needle, and I'm just going to weave this tail into the front loops only for each of those 7 stitches at the end of round 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and now that hole should be closed up if you just pull that yarn tail as tightly as you can. And then I'm just going to weave the yarn tail through to a random white stitch in the top. I'm not going to pull too tightly because I might misshape the leg if I do that, so I'm just going to be quite gentle with this, and then I'm just going to cut that. So that's the first leg that we've just done. So now we're ready to reattach our yarn and work the other leg. So now I'm ready to reattach my turquoise yarn and carry on and crochet the second leg here. So the stitch that I'm going to reattach my yarn into is I'm going to count back 7 single crochets from the final stitch marker that we placed. So this one here, and I'm going to include the marked stitch when I count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the one I'm going to reattach the turquoise into. So now I'm just going to work 7 single crochets up to that stitch marker, and I am again just going to mark that first stitch just to remind myself where the round starts. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the next one will be 7. And then we're going to next work into the final stitch remaining that has a stitch marker that we placed previously. So this one, I'm just going to remove the stitch marker because I know which one I'm going into. So sorry if you can't see this too well, the other leg kind of makes it a bit difficult, but yeah, try and make it as tight as you can. Again, we are going to go back and sew up any gaps like this gap here, so don't worry too much. But that was 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm just going to redo that one because I did something a bit weird there. I think I picked up a loop that I shouldn't have done. 5, 6, and 7, which brings us back to the first single crochet from round 1. So now all we need to do is we're just going to repeat rounds 2 to 7 exactly the same as we did for the other side. So again, I won't bother showing you that because you've already done it. And just remember that in round 6 you want to stuff the leg, otherwise you'll get to the end of round 7 and realise that you can't fit any stuffing in at that point. So just a reminder on that. And you'll just close up the hole in the exact same way as well that we did the other leg too. So I'll meet you when you finish that, because then what we're going to do is reattach some turquoise yarn and just close up this hole between the legs. Then we'll be ready to move on to a different part of the pattern. I completed both legs now, so what I'm going to do is I've got a small length of the turquoise yarn, and I'm just going to reattach this into the gap between the legs just so that I can close them up now. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to whip stitch it closed. Sorry. So if you just whip stitch across and pull tightly, the gap should then close up, and then you can just weave your yarn tail through to any other turquoise stitch, and do the same for the other tail as well, and then you can just cut that, and that should hopefully keep in place. So now you should have something that looks like this. So you've got your head like that, and then the body and the legs down here. So now I think we'll make the arms next. I've already gone ahead and made one of the arms, so this is what they're going to look like. So we obviously need to make two. So let's do the other one now together. So to start off with, you're going to use your kind of skin colour yarn, and you're going to do 4 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's round 1. Then for round 2, you're just going to increase all the way around, and then for rounds 3 to 5, you're just going to single crochet all the way around. So that should be 8 single crochets in each of rounds 3 to 5. So I'll meet you at the end of round 5, as we're then going to change to turquoise colour. I'm just about to do the last single crochet of round 5 now, and we're going to change colour in this stitch. So we're going to just be doing the normal colour change method here, not the fake single crochet method, because we can just be careful when we're sewing the arm down to make sure that we kind of hide where the colour change happens and you don't really see it. So I'm just going to, instead of pulling through in the current colour that I have, I'm going to pull through in turquoise instead. And then that means now we've come to the end of round 5 and we've got our turquoise colour attached, so we can just carry on crocheting in this colour. So all we're going to do now is for rounds 6 to 9, we're just going to keep single crocheting all the way around in our turquoise colour, just like this. So I'll meet you at the end of round 9. So I just reached the end of round 9, and that's almost it. So we just need to slip stitch across to close the arm up. Now I'm not going to be stuffing the arm at all. I think it looks nicer without the stuffing, and that's also how we did the pink soldier, if you also did that as well. So just to keep it consistent with that, I'm not going to be stuffing the arm. So I'm just going to now be doing 4 slip stitches across to close up the arm. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a tail for sewing. So now you should have 2 arms that look like this, and now we can sew them to the body. I've already sewn down one of the arms, so I'm going to do the other one with you now. Before you start sewing, you're obviously going to want to decide which side is going to be your front and which side is going to be your back for the body and head, I suppose. And if you look at mine, you can see that the head looks a little bit more wonky from this side, whereas this side it looks a lot neater. So I've decided that this is going to be my front side. So once you've decided that, then you're just going to want to place the arms where you think is about right. You could use a pin to help you with this, but I'm not going to be using any pins. I'm just going to be holding it in place with my hands. So I'm just trying to make sure that I line up this arm roughly in the same kind of position as the other arm as well. And also one tip as well for you is you can try and hide the colour change bit too. So you know, this is obviously the part where we did the colour change, so if you want to try and hide that, you can make sure that that part is facing the t-shirt so that you don't actually have to see that, whereas if you had it like this, then you'd obviously be able to see that. So that's just a tip for you there. So now I'm just going to whip stitch across the arm to sew this to the body, so I'm just going to start doing that now. Okay, so now I've done that, I'm just going to sew along the bottom of the arm as well, so these stitches here. Sorry, hit the camera by accident. So then once you've done that, then you should have basically gone all the way around now at this point. And then the final thing I'm going to do to stop the arm like flopping about so much is I'm just going to sew one stitch down on either side of the arm. So I'm going to start at the back, so I'm just going to sew probably this stitch down like that, and then I'm going to go back in through the arm to the front. And I'm just going to sew down a stitch at the front, so perhaps this one. So as you can see now, that's a lot more flat to the body and it's not moving about so much. So once I've done that, I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through to a random stitch, and then I can just cut that, and you can do the same thing when you do the other arm, obviously. So now I've got two arms that have been sewn down like this, and I think the next thing that I'm probably going to do is to add the numbers onto the front of the top, so let's do that next. I'm going to start adding the number 456 onto the front of the top now, and I just realised that I could actually use my yarn tail from one of my arms to start doing this, because I actually cut way too much yarn for that, and I could just use that for the embroidering part. Obviously, if you used a lot smaller of a tail for sewing down your arms, then you might not have any left, in which case you can just reattach some like a scrap piece of this turquoise yarn, but I'm just going to be feeding mine through to the front here, and then I can start embroidering the 456. I'm just going to embroider the 4 now. So there's the 4, and I'm just going to do the 5 and the 6 as well using this same yarn tail. Hopefully I have enough, if not I'll just have to reattach some more turquoise yarn. So I'll meet you when I've added the other two numbers. I've just finished adding the numbers, and this is what it looks like. Obviously, with the 5 and the 6 being curved numbers, you will probably have to do some shorter stitches to get the shape that you want, but hopefully this kind of helps you. Obviously, you're just going to have a go yourself really and try, and if you don't like it, you can always unpick it and try it again. I had to do that about 10 times probably while I was doing this, so don't worry, I definitely did not get this on my first attempt. But yeah, once you've done that, then you can just make sure that you weave your yarn tail through to a random turquoise stitch, and then you can just snip that. We're going to make the hair now, so grab your black yarn. The hair is made in multiple parts, so I'm going to show you how to do part 1 now. So to start off with, we're going to just chain 31, so 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. I'll meet you when I have 31. So now I've got my chain of 31, I'm going to start crocheting in the second chain from the hook. So I know it's harder to see with the black, but this is the first chain and this is the second one. You can work into these front loops if you want to, but I'm going to be working into the back loops. But if you want to make it simpler for yourself, then you can just use the front loops. It just slightly changes the way that it looks, but it doesn't make a massive difference. I just prefer doing it like this. So we're going to start off by doing 1 slip stitch, and then we're going to do 9 single crochets. So 1, 2, and so on. So this is my 9th one, So this is the first strand of hair basically, so I'm going to try and explain to you. You'll see when you obviously finish this how it turns out. Basically this is the first strand of hair, and we're just going to be creating loads of strands of hair along this original foundation chain, I guess you would call it, that we made. So yeah, that's the goal of this. So once you've done that, you're then just going to slip stitch into the next chain, and then I'll tell you what to do for the next strand of hair. So for each strand we do, we're going to start by chaining 11. So I've done a chain of 11 there. Sorry, I'm just pulling my yarn so I can get more yarn available. There we go. So there's my chain of 11, and I'm going to just do the same thing I did before. So I'm going to start in that second chain from hook. So just to show you again, that is the first one, that's the second one. So you could go into this loop here, but I'm going to go into the back loop, and I'm going to do a slip stitch, and then I'm going to do 9 single crochets along the chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the final thing I'm going to do is just a slip stitch into the next chain along from the original chain 31 that we did at the beginning. So that would be this one here. So I'm just going to show you again what this looks like at the moment. Sorry, my yarn has got knotted up and I'm finding it hard to pull on it, but so I'm just going to try and show you this from a better angle. But now we have 2 strands of hair, as you can see here, and we're going to be creating more along the chain here. So what we just did there for the second strand of hair, you're going to want to repeat that all the way across to the end of the chain. So I think that will be 18 more times, and then I'll meet you when you get to that point, and then we can move on to the next hair piece. I've just finished doing the final strand of hair. I know this looks like an absolute mess, but don't worry, we'll sort this out in a minute. I just wanted to mention that you probably want to leave quite a long tail when you cut your yarn at this point, because we're going to be sewing this piece sort of around the head, and then we're going to need to sew down some of the individual strands as well. So I'm just going to leave a very long tail, but it's not the end of the world if you don't, because you can always attach some more black yarn to help you with the sewing, so don't worry too much. But yeah, give me 1 second. I'm just going to try and put this in a more neat way to show you what we have here, and then I'll explain it to you. I've just kind of put the hair piece in a circle like this, so you can kind of see that we've got a strip, which is our original foundation chain, and you should have 20 strands of hair coming off from it. So hopefully that's what you have as well. It doesn't really matter if you maybe accidentally skipped a chain or something like that, because this isn't a very... we're not going to sew this down in a very precise way. It's meant to look a little bit messy, so don't worry too much if you don't have exactly 20 strands, but that is what you should have if you followed the instructions to the letter. So now I'm going to see about what we're going to do for the next hair piece. For the second part, you're going to start by chaining 26 this time. Then when you have your chain of 26, starting from the second chain from hook, we're going to do a slip stitch. And then we're going to do 14 single crochets. I'll meet you when I've done the 14. Once you've done your 14 single crochets, you're going to slip stitch into the next chain. And then you're going to, similarly to what we did before, except we're going to do a slightly different chain this time. So we're going to chain 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Then we're going to slip stitch into the second chain from hook, and we're going to do 14 single crochets. So I'll meet you when I've done that. So now I've done the 14 single crochets, I'm going to slip stitch into the next chain of the original chain of 26 that we did, so that would be this one. So you're just going to repeat that same thing all the way to the end of the chain. So you're going to chain 16, slip stitch into the second chain from hook, do 14 single crochets across that chain, and then slip stitch into the next chain on the original chain 26 that we did. So I think you'll need to do that 8 more times now, and that should get you to the end of the chain, so I'll meet you at that point. So this is what the second hairpiece should look like when you're done with it. There should be 10 strands of hair. And once again, I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving quite a long tail for sewing. So now the second hairpiece should be complete. I'm gonna start sewing down the hair now. So I've pinned hairpiece number 1 into place, and just to explain what you need to do for that, you basically just want to pin it going all the way around roughly round 6, I think it is, round 6 or round 7, somewhere around there. You may need to move it up or down a bit for yourself depending on how your head looks, because obviously yours is going to look a little bit different to mine because you're using different yarn and stuff like that, but this is roughly how it should look, so that you've got a sort of first layer of hair going all the way round the head. And we're going to start off by just whip stitching this main, like the first foundation chain that we created. We're going to start by whip stitching that to the head, so I'm just going to go into a nearby stitch like this, and then I'm gonna remove the pin actually so that I can easily get into the next stitch. And I'm just gonna go like this. So I think you get the idea. I'm just going to be whip stitching around. So I'll meet you when I get back to this edge here, and then I'll show you how I'm going to be sewing down the strands of hair. I finished whip stitching all the way around the head, so now this piece won't come off. But now I want to sew down the individual strands of hair as well, and I'm not necessarily going to be using a pin for each individual one. I'm probably just going to kind of do it freehand, but I just wanted to show you here that I'm roughly going to be sewing up to this point, so leaving about 3 single crochets, or I guess 3 single crochets in the slip stitch unsewn, because I want it to kind of flick out like that. So hopefully you can kind of see what I'm trying to do there. So when I'm sewing these strands down, I'm not going to be whip stitching, I'm instead going to be doing a running stitch. So by that I mean, rather than going into a black stitch and then into skin and then black, skin, then black and then skin, I'm going to show you actually. I'm going to go into the skin colour and then go into the black like this, and then I'm going to be going into the black and then into the skin and then into the skin and into the black. So hopefully you can kind of see the difference between that and the whip stitch. So I'm going to keep doing that until I get to the bit where I've pinned it. So I'll probably stop about here. I'm going to remove the pin as well actually. So now that bit is sewn down like that, and I'm just going to leave this bit unsewn, and then I'm basically just going to be doing that for each of the individual strands of hair. So I'm gonna try and show you how I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna move my yarn to a more convenient stitch, so back here, and then I'm gonna go into one of the stitches from the next strand of hair, and I'm going to try and sew that as close as I can really to this strand. So I'm going to go into skin stitch and then another skin stitch and into black stitch, then another black stitch, a skin stitch, and I'm just going to keep going like that until I get back to the top of this strand, and then I'll just do the exact same thing in a kind of zigzag way. So I'm going to go down this one and then back up the next one and so on. So it will take you a bit of time to do this, but yeah, you're just going to have to put something good on the telly or something while you do this to keep you entertained. So yeah, I will meet you when I have finished sewing down the final strand. And as I mentioned before, if you've run out of yarn, you didn't leave a long enough tail, you can just reattach some more black yarn to help you finish off sewing, so don't worry too much about that. So yeah, I'll meet you when I've finished. I finished sewing the individual strands down, as you can see. So there's a little bit of the end of it that I haven't sewn down, as I mentioned previously, so that it looks a little bit more natural. But yeah, so that's how that looks in the end. And now I'm just going to weave that yarn tail through to a random stitch kind of in the back of the head, and then I'll just cut that. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one as well, just get rid of that. But yeah, that is all you need to do to sew down the first hair piece. I've now pinned down part 2, ready to sew that, and I've zoomed out a bit in the hopes that you might be able to see this a bit better, hopefully. But effectively all I've done is I've kind of made it so that it's kind of curved round like this. So this is that original chain that we did. This is where it's sitting. When I sew these parts down, I'm going to make sure that you can't see any of the head between, but yeah, it's just the way that the pins are sitting at the moment. There's a little gap that you can see there, and I also just wanted to demonstrate to you what this part actually is. And I've placed this more towards our right because I want to make sure that there's kind of like more of a fringe towards the left here. So yeah, that's why I've done that. And this time I've pinned down each individual strand of hair as well, because this time I want to make sure that we're definitely going to be covering all of the head. Obviously there may be a few small gaps that you can't quite get to, but effectively the goal is to try and cover up as much of the skin colour as you possibly can when you're sewing down these strands of hair. And I'm not going to bother sewing down anything that overlaps with part 1. I'm only going to be sewing down any strands of hair to the like skin part that we haven't actually sewn into yet. So I'm sorry if that didn't make great sense. It's kind of hard for me to explain what I'm doing here, but hopefully me showing you is helpful. So basically I've just pinned down the second part here, and then I've pinned down each individual strand of hair in the way that I want it to sit. And now I'm going to start actually sewing this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to do similar to what I did with the part 1. I'm just going to sew down that original chain first with a whip stitch. So I'm going to sew round this part here, and then I'm going to be sewing down the individual strands themselves. So I'm just going to try and get into this stitch. This is going to be quite tricky. But just take your time. And the other thing to remember with this is it doesn't matter if you're not doing it perfectly, because the hair should look messy. It will look more realistic, I suppose, if you actually don't do it perfectly. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But yep, I'm just whip stitching this bit down. So I've done that bit. And I'm going to go into the next stitch. So hopefully you get the idea. It's basically the same as I did before, and I'll meet you when I start sewing the hair strands down. I finished whip stitching this part down, and as you can see, you can't see any of the skin underneath that now, so that's really good. So now I'm just going to start doing a running stitch on the strands again, basically similar to how we did before, and I'm just going to be sewing pretty much up to the point where I have put pins in, I think, although as you can see on this one I've put 2 pins actually, so I'm just going to remove this one. But yeah, so I'm just going to start doing my running stitch. Oh no, I've got a knot. There we go, I think yep, there we go, I did it. Okay, and now I'm gonna do another stitch. I'm just gonna keep going. So now I've reached the part that I've pinned. I might just sew down one more stitch, go on. So like that. And then I'm just going to move. So basically, as you can see here, I don't actually need to sew down much of this strand because most of it is overlapping with part 1, and I don't really want to be sewing anything that overlaps. So I'm just going to move my yarn tail to about here, and then I'm going to start sewing down this strand, trying to get it fairly close to the previous strand because I don't want there to be too much visible skin. I think that's literally going to be it for that strand, so I'm just going to remove that pin, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. So I'm going to push my yarn tail through to here, and then go into one of these stitches, and then another one, can't get into that one. And I hope you get the idea now. I'm not going to show you me doing the whole thing because I think that would just be a bit excessive, but I'm just going to do all of the strands. I'm going to just sew them down how each of them needs to be done. They're all going to be slightly different because they're all placed slightly differently around the top of the head. It's not quite as uniform as it was for part 1, but yeah, I'll meet you when I finish that. I finished sewing down the second part, as you can see, so this is what it's looking like now, and I'm just going to weave that yarn tail through, and I'll do the same thing with this little tail as well that's left. So now the hair is fully sewn down, and this is what it looks like. So now we can add the face details. I've just placed some 12mm safety eyes where I like the look of it, so you can just play around and see where you like. If you notice there's already some glue in there, I had to abandon an eye because I got glue on it and I messed it up, but I just wanted to try and show you how I glue them down. So I'm just going to put a bit of glue on the end there. I'm going to try my best not to get glue on the eye this time. So I'm just going to push it back into that stitch. I'm going to kind of twist it around, and if I can also kind of like squeeze this and push it in as well, like that, to try and get it firm against the skin piece as much as possible. So I'm just going to leave that to dry, and I managed not to mess it up this time, yay. I'm just going to do the exact same thing on the other side, and I'll meet you when I've done that. I glued both eyes down and then I used a scrap bit of black yarn just to add some eyebrows. Obviously this part's optional, so if you don't like how that looks then feel free to just leave it as it was, but yeah, just thought I'd show you that now as well. One additional touch that I forgot to add before is just the stripe along the side of the legs, so I'm just going to reattach some white yarn and do that on both sides. Now you can stop here if you want to. I think this is quite a cute little doll, but me being me, I wanted to add a removable jacket as well, so I'm going to talk you through how to make that now. Just a disclaimer, I'm not great at making clothes. It's not really my favourite thing to crochet, so I'm sure this isn't perfect, but it seemed to work for my doll, so hopefully it'll work for yours, and maybe you might need to add some rows or maybe make the rounds a little bigger for the sleeves, for example, but at least it gives you a bit of a base to work with, so hopefully this pattern will work for you as well. So I'll just move into how we can make the jacket next. So the jacket is worked in 5 parts. There's going to be 2 sleeves, 2 front panels and 1 back panel. The sleeves are both worked in exactly the same way, so I've just done one for you here and I'm going to do the other one with you now. So you basically just need to repeat this pattern twice in total, and that will get you your 2 sleeves. So it's quite simple. If I can actually get my yarn on my hook. There we go. So we're going to start off by doing a chain of 10. So once you've got your chain of 10, you're then going to start working into the first chain that you did, and you're going to do a single crochet in there. So just like this, and then you're going to continue single crocheting around the chain, so that should be 10 single crochets in total. So that's the end of round 1. You should have 10 single crochets all the way around. Then all you're going to do is for rounds 2 to 8, you're going to just single crochet all the way around again. So that's 7 more rounds of single crocheting all the way around. So I'll meet you at the end of round 8. So I got to the end of round 8 and now I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a bit of a tail for sewing. Doesn't have to be particularly long. So yeah, now I have my 2 sleeves here, so those are ready for later when we're going to do some sewing. But the next thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to making the front panels. I'm going to start off by making the front right panel from our perspective as we look at the doll. So I'm just going to start off by doing a chain of 6. This is going to be worked in rows. Then all I'm going to do is, starting from the second chain from hook, so this one, although I am going to be working into the back loops, as you've probably noticed I prefer working in the back loops, I'm going to be doing 5 single crochets across. And I'm also going to be crocheting over this tail just to hide it, and then I can snip it at the end. It's just one less thing to do at the end. This last one can be tricky to get into. Okay, so that's the end of row 1, and I have my 5 single crochets across. So at the start of every row after this, I'm going to do chain 1, turn. And so for rows 2 to 5, so the next 4 rows, I'm just going to be single crocheting across again, so 5 single crochets in total. So just like this for rows 2 to 5, so I'll meet you at the end of row 5. So I just got to the end of row 5, so I'm going to start row 6 now, so I'm going to chain 1 and turn. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do 3 single crochets and then a decrease. So 1, 2, 3, and then a decrease. Then I'm going to chain 1, turn, and this time I'm going to do decrease, 2 single crochets. So that's row 7 complete. And then for row 8, I'm going to chain 1, turn, and I'm going to do single crochet and then a decrease. So now we just have 2 single crochets left. And then for rows 9 and 10, I'm just going to chain 1, turn, and single crochet across. So this is 9, and then this is 10. So that is the front right panel complete. So this is what it looks like. And now I'm just going to cut the yarn, again leaving a bit of a tail for sewing. Don't need to leave too much. So that is that. Then I'm going to just show you how to do the front left panel now, sorry. So before I explain the rows for the left panel, I just wanted to show you why it has to be different to the right side panel, and that's simply because there needs to be a bit of space for us to for us to sew the sleeve, and then for us to put obviously the arm into the sleeve. And so the decreases need to sit on the right hand side for the right panel, whereas on the left side the decreases are going to need to sit on the left, and if we just did this piece twice, then we'd end up with one side showing the wrong side and the other side showing the right side, and it would just look strange. So we need to slightly alter the pattern for the left panel. So I hope that made sense, but I thought I'd just explain it first before I talk through the rows, so you understand what's going on here. So for rows 1 to 5 is exactly the same as what we've just done here. So you're going to have rows of 5 single crochets across. Then for row 6, you're going to do chain 1, turn, decrease 3 single crochets. Then row 7, chain 1, turn, 2 single crochet, decrease. Then row 8, chain 1, turn, decrease, single crochet. So you're basically just changing where the decrease is done in each row, and making it the opposite to what we did on this panel. And then for rows 9 to 10, you're just again going to chain 1, turn, and single crochet across, exactly the same as we did here. So I'm just going to do all of that now because I don't think it really requires me showing you all of the steps again, and then I'll show you when I've finished that. So I'm at the end of row 10 for the left panel, so I'm just going to do the exact same thing, leave a tail for sewing, and then I'll just quickly show you. So now both of these pieces are the same way around, and now obviously the decreases are on the right for the right one and on the left for the left one. So this is what we want. So those are the front panels done. So now it's just one last piece to do, which is the back panel. So let's get started with that. The back panel is also worked in rows, so we're going to start off by chaining 17 this time. And then, as with before, we're going to just start from that second chain from hook, and we're going to be doing single crocheting across basically, but we're going to be doing obviously 16 single crochets this time because our foundation chain is a lot longer. So I'm just going to be single crocheting across like this, and I'll meet you when I get to the end of row 1. So I've got to the end of row 1 and this is what it's looking like. So for each of the next 9 rows that we're going to be doing. It's just going to be the same thing, chain 1 turn at the beginning of each of the rows. So I'm just going to talk you through them because it's all stuff that you've done before, so you should be able to get through it fairly easily. So for rows 2 to 5, you're just going to be doing chain 1 turn and single crocheting across. Then row 6, chain 1 turn, decrease 12 single crochet, decrease. Row 7, chain 1 turn, decrease 10 single crochet, decrease. Row 8, chain 1 turn, decrease 8 single crochet, decrease. And then rows 9 to 10, you're just going to do chain 1 turn and do 10 single crochets across in each of those rows. So I'll meet you at the end of row 10. So I got to the end of row 10, so now all I'm going to do is again cut my yarn. This time don't worry about leaving a tail for sewing because you actually already have enough tails from the other pieces. So I am just going to knot this piece off. Make sure that you're obviously doing this on the wrong side. I know this is the wrong side because I crocheted over the tail, and whatever side that tail sits on I know is the wrong side. So I'm just going to be knotting this tail. And I'll do probably one more and then I'll leave it at that. Okay, so in fact I can cut this tail at the same time while I'm thinking about it. So now that we have all our pieces, it's time to sew them together. So I'll show you how to assemble everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is sewing the front panels to the back panel. And you want to make sure that you're sewing everything right sides together. So this is the wrong side, so I'm going to flip it over, and this is the right side. Then these are both the right sides at the moment, so I'm just going to flip them over so that we're sewing the right side to the right side on the back panel, so just like this. And then to sew it together, all I'm going to do is get my yarn needle. We don't actually need to sew anything on the rows that have the decreases or rows 9 and 10. So basically we only want to sew row 1 to 5 together on both of the back and front panels. So I'm just going to kind of weave my yarn tail down through to where I actually want it to be, which is at the beginning of row 5. So I'm just going to go through like this. And now I'm in the right position to start sewing. So you can kind of do this however you want. I'm not saying at all that this is the best way to do it. I don't really know, to be honest. I'm not great, as I mentioned, at making clothes. So I'm just going to be sewing across like this. And then I might just do one more final at the bottom like that. Okay, so once you've done that, you just want to like knot this tail, kind of like we did before. And I'd probably do it twice. So 1, 2, and then I will cut that tail. So that's one of the sides. So I'm basically just going to do the exact same thing on this side, and I won't bother showing you that because it is literally the exact same thing that we need to do. the front panels are both sewn down now to the back panel. So the next thing to do is to sew the sleeves on. So before you do that, just turn them inside out, just like this. And then obviously you want to do the same thing for this one. Oops. There we go. So now these are inside out because obviously we're going to be turning the jacket back the right way round once we finished sewing everything. So you're just going to again get your yarn needle, and we're just going to be sewing the sleeve to this kind of area here, if you can see. Hopefully, sorry, I'm not very good at explaining this, but hopefully you can just watch and understand what I'm trying to say. So we're basically just going to be sewing the sleeve around this gap that we've created here by not sewing these rows down, rows 6 to 10 of the panels, and we're going to leave a couple of single crochets unsewn at the top of the sleeve. So I'm just going to do this on camera now, and like I say, hopefully me doing it will kind of explain to you what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so I'm fairly happy that that sleeve has been sewn down now. If you're not happy with it when you turn it the right way round, you can always do a bit more sewing afterwards. So I'd probably suggest that maybe you leave that tail just in case you want to make any amendments to it afterwards. Obviously the panels are a bit easier to sew down, but the sleeves you might want to do a couple of extra stitches potentially, depending on how it looks when you turn it the right way around. So I'm not going to do anything with this tail for now. I'm just going to do the same thing on this side, and I'll show you when I've finished that. Both sleeves are sewn down now, so I'm just going to turn the piece inside out, although this will make it the right way around. So I'm just going to do that and then do the other sleeve. And now I'm going to try the jacket on my doll and see if I need to make any adjustments to the sewing of the sleeves, which I think I might need to. So I'm just going to pull the arms through, and then I'm going to pull this arm through. Just going to see how that looks. Actually, I think I'm happy with that. I'm not going to make any more adjustments. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. So that's what it looks like from the back. Potentially, actually no, I think I just need to tighten that sewing a little bit, which I'll do in a sec. But yeah, I'm actually happy with how that jacket looks, to be honest. So I'm just going to go back, turn it inside out again to just finish off tying up any loose ends that we have. So I'm just gonna, because I've got a couple of ends here that I need to weave in, and then I just need to tighten up these two strings over here and then cut these off. So I'm just going to do that now and neaten this up a little bit, and then I'll meet you again. I turned the jacket back the right way around. This is what it now looks like, and I tidied up all those loose ends. The final thing that you can do, you don't have to do this, but just to complete the look, is to add a white stripe along the arm. So I'm just going to do this now. and you can't really just do one stripe in one go, because then you get like a gap underneath the stripe, unless I guess you glued it down. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to do it in little like small stitches, like I did when I sewed on the numbers. So I'm just going to be going in like this. So I'm sure you probably get the idea. I'm going to do that to the end of this arm, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other arm. I added the white stripes to either arm. They're not perfect, but they'll do. So that's the last step really. So now I'm just going to put the jacket onto the finished doll, and that will be it. I put the jacket on, and this is what the finished player looks like. So this is from the front, and then from the back, obviously the hair's a bit mental, but you can just kind of brush it down a little bit if you want. You could also sew it down a bit more, but I kind of like the messy look that it has. So yeah, that is the completed tutorial. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye guys.